Hi there everybody, Jack here at the Vinyl Voyage. So today we're going to be looking at the golden age of psychedelia and specifically some of the big hitters within the genre. So everything I show today is pretty well known. If you're into psychedelic music, you'll have definitely heard all of these albums. There's nothing really rare or obscure in here. Everything is easily accessible. So these are all albums that you can buy on reissue for a reasonable price. So if you're thinking about dipping your toe into the murky waters of psychedelic music, these would be good starting points. So the majority of the albums I'll show are from 67. I'll show a couple from 66, where I think psychedelic music really started to take off, and then there'll be a couple from 68. Okay then, so without further ado, let's look at the records. So first up then is the Beatles' Revolver from 1966 on EMI's Parlophone label. So if you listen to the Beatles' previous album, Rubber Soul, from December 65, you can hear that the Beatles had really developed, both lyrically and musically. They'd looked to the East for ideas on instrumentation. You know, George Harrison famously used the sitar, brought the sitar to Western popular music in Norwegian Wood. But for me, it's really Revolver from 1966 that they really went full-blown psychedelic. They started to use the studio more as an instrument in itself and experiment more in the studio with things like double-tracked vocals, with running their tapes backwards, especially on guitar leads and those backwards sounding guitar leads. I think they use that on Taxman, messing around with loops as well, and you can really hear that to amazing effect on Tomorrow Never Knows, the absolute psychedelic behemoth at the end of side 2 on Revolver. But there's loads of great Psych songs on here. I'm Only Sleeping is fantastic. What could be more Psych than Living in a Yellow Submarine? All the little samples in there and background chatter. She Said, for me is, again, like Tomorrow Never Knows, an absolute psychedelic masterpiece. If you listen to a lot of neo-psych, you can still hear that blueprint for drums and bass that the modern bands use and they've taken directly from She Said. Listen to anything by Liam Gallagher or the new Liam Gallagher, John Squire song. Is it the one about a rainbow, like a rainbow, or whatever it's called? It's like taken directly from She Said, that great drum and bass sound. Even lyrically, that song is very LSD inspired. It's inspired by a party the Beatles were hosting in the States, where they were all tripping out, I think bar Paul McCartney, and the actor Henry Fonda pitched up and he started bumming everybody out, sticking everybody on a bad trip by talking about what it's like to be dead, and yeah, I think he was ejected and asked to leave. But yeah, other great songs on here. Maybe not so psychedelic, but For No One's just an absolute heartbreaking ballad. I love the little bit of instrumentation in there where the French horn comes in. Here, There and Everywhere is another beautiful ballad as well. But for me, this was really the album that brought in the psychedelic period. So next up then, we're going to Texas. Sticking to 1966, we have the psychedelic sounds of the 13th floor elevators, led by the amazing Rocky Erickson. So this was released about a month after Revolver. It was released on International Artists, and the 13th floor elevators were the first band to actually call themselves psychedelic. They used the word psychedelic on their album art on the back. But it's just absolutely fantastic album art with the pyramid and the eye, which have become, again, staples of Psych album art. You look at more neo-psych bands like Spacemen 3 and they've got the eye and the pyramid. But there's so many great songs on here. You've got that staple from the Nuggets compilation and a load of other garage rock comps. You're Gonna Miss Me. You've got Roller Coaster as track 2. I think that bass line from Roller Coaster, it sounds like it inspired Lucifer Sam on Pink Floyd's first album. Other great songs on here. Fire Engine at the start of track 2 is really cool, and I love Kingdom in Heaven as well. Or Kingdom of Heaven is an excellent song, but a little bit more garagey than, or a lot more garagey than Revolver. But I think what really gives it that psychedelic sound is the use of the electric jug. I believe that's what gives You're Gonna Miss Me that like unique kind of warbling sound, and a few of the other tracks on the album as well. So far I've kind of shied away from giving you a definition of psychedelia in terms of the golden age of psychedelia, but I thought I would leave it to Rocky Erickson and the boys, because on the back of the cover they've got like a little blurb here that I think kind of quite well sums it up. So they go on to say, recently it has become possible for man to chemically alter his mental state and thus alter his point of view, that is, his own basic relation with the outside world, which determines how he stores his information. He then can reconstruct his thinking and change his language so that his thoughts bear more relation to his life and his problems, therefore approaching them more sanely. It is this quest for pure sanity that forms the basis of the songs on this album. Psychedelic stuff from the 13th floor elevators. So next up then we have Pink Floyd with A Nice Pair. This is a compilation from 1973 that brings together their first two albums, Piper at the Gates of Dawn from 67 and the more spacey, out there, A Saucer Full of Secrets from 1968. But I want to speak a little bit more about 1967's Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Firstly though, I'll just show you this nice cover art on the compilation that was done by Hypnosis. And this is a really, really nice compilation. If you want to save a bit of money, obviously you get the first two albums for a pretty reasonable price. It's not overly expensive. But the one I'd like to speak about a little bit more is the first album, A Piper at the Gates of Dawn, while Pink Floyd were still being led by the amazing Syd Barrett, who was their leader at that time. And I think this is a great example of UK psychedelia and how it differs from its American counterpart. It's more whimsical, it's more childlike. I think the US, they had, you know, that harder psych sound, it was more garagey sound. But with English psychedelia, I think Andy Partridge from XTC gave a great definition of it, where he said that English psychedelia from the golden age was almost like nursery rhymes for adults. So if you think about some of the songs on Piper at the Gates of Dawn, you've got The Gnome, you've got Scarecrow, you've got Bike, which are all really, really childlike songs. I love that. I've got a bike, you can ride it if you like. What could be more nostalgic for childhood than borrowing a bike off of someone? But yeah, it's such a great, great album. There is some harder moments, some spacier moments on here as well, like Interstellar Overdrive and Astronomy Domain. I love the backing vocals in that. They're so psychedelic. My favourite song, Lucifer Sam, is fantastic as well. But yeah, what a brilliant, brilliant piece of psychedelic work. Saucer Full of Secrets is great as well, but I really, really like Pink Floyd's first album. Well, back to the United States and San Francisco for Jefferson Airplane's Surrealistic Pillow, again from 1967. So for me, this album really epitomised that San Franciscan sound. I had those two massive songs on it, Somebody to Love, that Grace Slick, previously of the Great Society, had taken with her from her previous band to Jefferson Airplane, and it also had another top 10 hit with White Rabbit. I think the song that appears on almost every single movie that's set in the late 60s, they always put in White Rabbit. I absolutely love that song. Lyrically, it's brilliant, inspired by Lewis Carroll's Alice Through the Looking Glass. Really, really good, but it's got lots of great songs on here. Very, very folky in places. Songs like Embryonic Journey with that Jorma Kaukonen finger-picking guitar is absolutely brilliant. I love She Has Funny Cars, is great as well. But what a talented band Jefferson Airplane were. I don't think they get as much credit as they should. You know, like every member of the band could sing. Jorma could sing. Grace Slick, fantastic female vocalist. Paul Cartner, Marty Balin, just really, really good. Plastic Fantastic Lover is brilliant as well. I love the song My Best Friend. I think that was by their previous, well, it was written by their previous drummer, Skip Spence, who went then on to form Moby Grape, another great psych band from the late 60s. But yeah, this is such a good album. Really, really recommended if you've not heard it. The UK and Birmingham this time, we have Traffic with Mr. Fantasy, 1967. This was one of the first records to come out on the new Island label. But the thing I really, really like about Traffic is they had those three really, really talented multi-instrumentalists. You had Stevie Winwood, You had Chris White and you had Dave Mason, great drummer as well, and Jim Capaldi. But those three multi-instrumentalists, the amount of different instruments that they play in this album, there's Hammond organ, there's harpsichord, there's sitar, there's saxophone, they put on mellotron on there, there's some instruments I don't even recognise, tambura, shakai, just absolutely brilliant. This is the UK edition of this album. If you listen to the American one also includes the big single that got left off of this album. The UK version, the American version has Paper Sun and Hole in My Shoe, which this doesn't have. I quite like to pick up an American copy of this because I don't really listen to singles overly much. But Mr. Fantasy itself is a great track, utterly simple, really, really good. Produced by the great Jimmy Miller, so another great Psych album from the UK. Traffic. Next then, back to the States and Los Angeles for the quintessential Los Angeles band The Doors, their debut album from 1967 on Elektra Records. Another Psych masterpiece that's absolutely packed full of great songs. I love that bossa nova influenced Break On Through. You've got blues on here, you've got that absolutely unbelievable organ introduction that we hear on Light My Fire. I love Willie Dixon's brilliant, the cover of Willie Dixon's Backdoor Man. But what a great band the Doors were, I think. I think if you strip away a lot of the Lizard King mythology and all that kind of nonsense, they were just a really great, tight band with fantastic personalities that you really heard coming through in their music. You know, you got all that great jazz drumming from John Densmore, Robbie Krieger, absolute virtuoso on the guitar, really underrated, I think. He's got that lovely finger-picking guitar style. And then obviously the brilliant keyboards from Ray Manzarek, and you know, they developed their own sound without a bass guitarist. I think they quite often had bass playing in their albums, but obviously a lot of that bass sound was played by Ray Manzarek on keyboard. But yeah, just what an album. Obviously finishing off with The End. Has there ever been a song that sounded like The End, that was as monumental and epic as The End, with lyrics like that? Jim Morrison, obviously the quintessential rock and roll frontman. But then there's really tender moments on here as well. Songs like The Crystal Ship, which is like absolutely beautiful melody. Alabama Song, which is a great cover as well. Sounds nothing like the original. But yeah, really good. If you've not heard it, I'm surprised if you've not heard it, but if you've not heard it, you have to buy the Doors debut album. Staying then in the United States, we've got the amazing Beach Boys with Smiley Smile. Not a band that are supposedly synonymous with psychedelic music, but this beauty from the tail end of '67, I think is like a really a Psych masterpiece. Really lo-fi. I think a lot of it was recorded at Brian Wilson's home. Obviously a bit of a mishmash of songs that were kind of cobbled together after the aborted Smile sessions, but a really psychedelic album. You know, look at that cover. Got a psychedelic cover. Then you've got really great Psych songs like Good Vibrations with that amazing theremin. Heroes and Villains, Vegetables. What can be more psychedelic than chomping down on vegetables as you sing a song? And then like other like little Psych oddities like She's Going Bald or Wind Chimes, Getting Hungry. But yeah, it's a really great Psych album, this. I've got to say, I actually prefer this to the Smile sessions. Released on EMI in the UK, Capital, obviously in the States. It's even got a little bit of Eastern wisdom on the back cover. The smile that you send out returns to you, ancient Indian wisdom. So this is a UK first press, stereo first press. I think the rest of the things I've showed are all reissues. This is the only original. But yeah, absolutely love this album. I was reading a little thing that Carol Wilson had said about this album, and he had claimed that Smiley Smile had been used in a centre in Fort Worth in Texas for people who had overdosed in LSD. He claimed that this album which they didn't use any remedies whatsoever, no pharmaceuticals to bring the people down. All they did was put on Smiley Smile, and the person who had overdosed was immediately flooded with good vibes and taken down into a calmer state of mind. I'm not really sure if I believe that though, because I wouldn't like to hear "She's Going Bald" if I was hitting a bad trip. But there you go, Smiley Smile. So to 1968 now, and St Albans in the UK with the Zombies and their absolute masterpiece, Odyssey and Oracle, released in CBS Records. Out of everything I've mentioned, in fact, out of all the Psych albums that have ever been put out, this is probably my favourite of all time. Just an absolute masterpiece. It brings the best bits of the Beatles, you know, in terms of the melodies, the songwriting, and the absolutely beautiful harmonising and voices that you would hear in a Beach Boys album, and it kind of seems to combine them all. It sits up there with the likes of Pet Sounds, Sgt. Pepper, and really, along with the Sphinx and the Pyramids, it's one of the world's greatest mysteries why this album wasn't more famous at the time. You know, it only really had that one big hit, Time of the Season, but it wasn't well received at the time. For Chris White and Rod Argent, their principal songwriters, it was massively demoralising. It's now went on to be a cult classic, and it's rightly regarded at the very, very top of, you know, the music that came out in the late 60s. But at the time, it just wasn't. You know, some of the songs on here, Care of Self 44, with those beautiful harmonies, you know, you listen to that, that's as good as anything the Beach Boys did in terms of harmonising. A Rose for Emily's a really beautiful song, as is Beechwood Park. Changes, absolutely fantastic, and obviously the great song Time of the Season. But, you know, along with Colin Bluntstone's voice, he had such a unique voice, their lead singer. It was really, really beautiful as well. But yeah, what a great, great album. If you've not heard it, you've got to check out Odyssey and Oracle. Really, really fantastic album. Still in 1968 then, we have the Jimi Hendrix Experience on Reprise Records. So in terms of, you know, hard psychedelic rock or acid rock, there's probably nothing better than this. This is really as good as it gets. Hendrix, as we all know, is an absolutely explosive guitar player, but really fluid as well. He almost made it, well, he just made it look effortless, but some absolutely brilliant songs on here. This is quite a nice repress. I love that album art. A lot of really great songs on here. The guitar playing and the sound of the guitar and Burning in the Midnight Lamp, really, really good. Other psychedelic classics, like his version of All Along the Watchtower. I love Dylan's one, but you know, in terms of songs or cover versions being better than the original, you know, I love the original one, but that's so good. Voodoo Child, Crosstown Traffic's amazing as well. Obviously, have you ever been to Electric Ladyland? Even the songs that Hendrix didn't write himself, Little Miss Strange, is really, really cool. Yeah, absolutely brilliant stuff. Love it. So last up then is probably the only lesser known band that I've shown today, and that is July. This is their debut album from 1968. They sound a little bit like early Pink Floyd, Syd Barrett era Pink Floyd, but even though they're lesser known, they're still really, really easy to get into. They're an accessible band. There's no like 20-minute drum solos or 15-minute wailing psychedelic guitar solos. Again, UK Psych. It was originally put out on the Major Minor record label. This is a reissue on Gerson, a really cool Spanish label that puts out a lot of fantastic late 60s, early 70s psych and prog and little kind of curios. But it's really, really well put together. I love the album art on this. Check that out. That's so cool. Yeah, the song My Clown's really, really good. I think that was their single. Dandelion Seeds is great as well. Yeah, highly recommend this if you want to dip your toe a little bit further into those psychedelic waters. So that brings down the curtain on my video of psychedelic big hitters. So if you enjoyed, please give us a thumbs up. Any comments, as usual, I would love to hear them, and I'll always respond. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd love that too. Please subscribe, hit the button. Other than that, I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.